The next thing was go take this thing for a drive, and there's a noticeable improvement. The problem now is the shift points, right? Like the RPMs when you're shifting at wide open throttle. This thing didn't want to shift. The revs just kept going up. It went up past 4,500. I had to let off the gas pedal for it to shift and then continue into the other gears. What you do there for that is you've got this cable in behind here with this white clip, and you, on each side, you're gonna, with your fingers or a screwdriver or something like that, you're gonna pry this clip out of here, and then you're gonna adjust the cable that goes inside the sleeve here. So that's holding it in this position. Now, as you can see, it's all the way back, and I don't have really no slack on this cable. So I'm gonna go underneath. I'm gonna show you where that cable goes to. It comes down here and it hooks onto the top lever on our shifter here. So this is shifting the gears, and this is the throttle valve cable. And then there's a spring on here that connects onto there, and it keeps the tension. That spring goes back to this bracket right there. And then the cable, this is the bracket over here where it's held in place. That spring is holding it all the way back this way towards the front of the vehicle. Now if you see here, this is the movement in the cable here. So that spring is holding it all the way back that way, and then this is the action of the cable. So what we're doing when we're adjusting it upstairs is we're basically adjusting the location of this, right? And it's not a lot. Inside there's gonna be a pedal or a piece of metal that engages the end of the governor valve, I think it is. And so that's what's gonna control your shift points and your line pressure. So when we're adjusting this, we're going to be adjusting those shift points. I do believe the way it goes is upstairs, the further you push the cable in, the more you adjust the cable towards the cab, the higher the RPM is gonna be for shifting. And that's the problem we have now. So we got to bring that cable out towards the front of the truck, and you bring it out towards the front of the truck, then it's going to drop that RPM range. So we're basically at the highest end of that right now, and we want to bring it back down. But now that we took that spring off on the bottom, you can see where we got some slack on our cable here, and we didn't have that before. You don't want to take that spring off on the bottom when you're making this adjustment. I'm just kind of explaining that. So then I want to pull this white lock tab off of here. And you kind of want to be careful because it could break. And now with that white clip off, now you can move our cable in here. So I'm basically grabbing it from the back here, and I'm pushing it in. So this is all the way towards the front of the vehicle, and that's pretty much all the way towards the back of the vehicle. We will want to probably start somewhere in the middle. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back down underneath and put that spring back on. And then I think what it is we wanna disconnect this cable. And this is gonna be, you see where it hits the stopper there? You want that contacting the stopper. And then we want just a little bit of play in the cable when we set it. So we would take this off the end here, which just slides off the end, you see that? So this would be contacted there, all the way closed. And then when we want to make this adjustment, so you see that it's not even lined up with the pin right now. We would actually want this forward and just a little bit ahead. That's going to give us a slack in the cable, and then at that point we should be close in the proper range that we're at. Then you go take it for a drive, and then you adjust it accordingly, right? If you still need to drop the RPMs, you're gonna push this thing forward. If you found that you went too far forward, then you want to go back a little bit. But those are the fine adjustments. In this case here, we just want to get it in the ballpark, and then you'd fine tune it afterwards. Back underneath here, after we disengage the lock at the top of the engine there, now this does end up moving a little more freely here. And when I do this, you can see this is kind of like the free movement, free play in there. So what happened was that is all the way this way,
and that's all the way this way. So what happened was I had it all the way there. There was no clearance in there. So it's pretty hard to do, but if you were down here per se, and you kind of got that in the middle, that's achieving the same as what we have up top there. But we're going to put our spring back on here, and then we're going to adjust it from up top like you're supposed to. But this is just for demonstration's sake. This is the movement down here. So this is just right here. When I hit it there, that's just contacting that valve right there, that tab inside the transmission. And now when you pull on it, that's what's pushing that piston or that valve body in, engaging it. And then here is our free play here before it does the engagement. Here it is here with the spring connected back on there. So now that's pulling it all the way back forward again. And when we adjust that in the front, we're probably going to likely want in around here. That still gives us some free play before it engages the valve.
Okay, so now you see here how that's all the way back again. So I want to move my cable forward just to a point there where you want that lined up, and then just a touch more. That's what I'm gonna set it to. I'm gonna try that, start there, and then adjust it if I have to after the fact. Got our clip back on here. We just made our adjustment. Now you can see we got a little bit of clearance in there. So if we pull on this, it's hard to tell because you feel the tension in this spring, so it's pretty hard to feel this one here. But there's just a little bit of movement here before that valve down there is going to engage. Now, if I knew what the proper setting was, which I don't know, I'm just making this up myself right now. If I knew what the proper one was, you could theoretically just put or measure that space there, and once you've done that, you could line this up with where that is sitting, and then that would be your simple, easy adjustment for this cable. I think the reason is that you kind of got to get it in the ballpark, and you have to adjust it according to what the vehicle wants. If we continue to have any more troubles, the reason behind it could very well be we still got a speed sensor in the transmission, and we have our throttle position sensor. So over here is the throttle position sensor, and when that throttle body is opened up, this sensor is communicating to the computer, and the speed sensor off the transmission is communicating to the computer, and that information is basically what is kind of telling your transmission to do its job. So if after all this work that we've done, and we still have issues with this, after adjusting the cable, after changing all those new parts, this would be the next thing. This here sensor and the speed sensor underneath connected to the transmission.
This is the speed sensor that's off the back of the transmission. You can see here's the transmission pan where we did all that work, and we're just going to move over, and here's our speed sensor here. So we just unplug this plug here, and then we're just going to screw this out and put a new one in, and it's just that easy.
Likewise, on the throttle position sensor, we unplug this one, remove those two screws, and pull that out. Now this one here, there's going to be a little factor that you gotta take into note when you reinstall it. Here on the bench, this is going to be that speed sensor here, and if you want a part number, this boss right here is what unthreads it out of the transmission. And so I've just got a 1-inch socket fits on that. Could be metric, I don't know, but this is what I got to fit on there to screw that out of there. So this throttle body here, here's our mass air pressure sensor. So this is reading the pressure. Here is our idle control sensor here, and there's a little piston inside there that moves around, I guess, as you've got this sitting in idle. And then here is our throttle position sensor. So as our throttle is adjusted here, this is going to read that and send that information to the PCM. And again, if this is sending incorrect information, that should probably affect your shifting as well. So What I like to do here is I just got a little Ziploc bag, and I got these 3 sensors in the Ziploc bag, and I throw that in the truck, and just in case you're on the side of the road and this thing's running funny or something like that, this ends up being a fast, easy fix. All you need is a screwdriver to replace any of these sensors. So what I've done in the past to make it easy for myself, these are the special screws that they use there. So that's a Torx bit, and it's wore off on the handle here, but I do believe this is a T25 to remove those 2 screws. So what I do is I get rid of these, and then I just get a normal Robertson screwdriver and a normal Robertson screw. This should be a number 10-32 machine screw. So the number 10 is the diameter, and the 32 is going to be the thread pitch for the screw. And if you compare these 2 together, they should end up being the same thread pitch. So there's an example there of how the thread pitch is the same and the same diameter. I've done this many times, never had a problem. And like I say, it's just that this is a more common fastener, easier to get, easier to use and replace. Unless, of course, you just want to have one of these screwdrivers and your spare sensors, whatever you choose to do. What I've done is I've released it here, and as you can see in there, it's kind of clocking this way, right? So that's clockwise rotation, and that's kind of where it wants to sit. Now, when you put this back on, it's going to be like that, and then you'll feel the spring tension in there as you turn it back. It's just going to have just a little bit of spring tension as you turn it back and screw the new one back into place with those 2 screws there. And this is what it looks like on the inside. You can see that that isn't directly straight up and down. That has to engage into there. So that tang is going to contact either side of those 2 triangle pieces there on there, and then there's a spring tension in here. And I do believe the way it works is that spring tension is kind of like the resistance in there or whatever is giving the signal to the PCM. So the greater the resistance, then that changes the signal that goes to the PCM. One more important thing that we should address is to make sure that you're getting the right sensor for your application. Here's an example of 2 different styles here, and this has happened to me before where I've ordered sensors for a vehicle and they ended up being a different plug size because of the year. This is one of those times where, you know, everybody jokes about what was the year, engine size, blah, blah, blah when you order parts. And, you know, this is an example of where that information is gold to make sure you get the right part. Sometimes, if you go for, like, say, for example, for a Jeep, and you go in there and you get this same sensor for 1 year, and the year previous could be different, right? So these 2 here, different plug style, same sensor. These 2 here, same sensor, different plug style. You can see right there. Another example is on the O2 sensor, different plug style. These were ordered for a job, these ones here, they're the wrong fit and they can't be returned. Money out of pocket for a mistake like that, try to save you the same problem. So make sure that before you order your sensor, you know what plug style you have before you do that to make sure you get the right one, because they're not necessarily cheap. We've removed the 2 sensors here. There's the throttle position sensor, the old one. Here's our old speed sensor right here. Now what I want to do is I want to see if we have any difference in readings from this old one to the new one. I'm curious as to find out what's going to happen here, but I did my best not to remove any of that gunk off the end there. So that end is magnetic, and what you have there are all the particles from inside the transmission that accumulated on there. Maybe that is altering the reading. If that's the case, then maybe all you need to do is remove this sensor, clean it, and put it back in so it starts reading correctly again. And there again, you can save some more money. I have the meter hooked up to our new sensor, and I've got it on our little diode setting there. And then I'll just touch the probe to the other one and we'll see what our reading is. So we've got a steady in around 0.711 there on this new one. So we're going to try the old one. We'll see what the reading is on that. And then we're going to clean it and see if the reading has changed. Got the old one hooked on here. We still got our gunk on the end. We'll see what our reading is. So we do have a difference. 0.697, 698, in around there. So let's clean the end of that and see if we get a difference in the reading. We clean the end of the sensor here. We're going to try that reading again. We're going to see if it's improved. If it did change, it didn't change by much, if at all. I don't think we can call that a change there, but we do have a difference in the numbers. Now, I don't know the significance of that change, but I'm hoping that it's enough that it might get the transmission to shift a little better. It's running not bad, but we just want it to run a little bit better. Here's the new sensor installed. We take that old one out. Now be prepared for a mess, because we've got a lot of transmission fluid that came out of there when we took that sensor out. Make sure that you're ready to pop the new one in right away, or put a rag or a plug or something in there if you're gonna check the sensor like I did on the bench. This is the new one installed, plugged in, not very hard at all. Ended up using a few extensions to get past this front drive shaft with the ratchet. And I used a 1-inch socket to get that out and put the new one in. We've replaced that throttle position sensor. I know it's not ideal. We're having trouble getting a new one, so I put a used one on there. And we'll see if that makes any difference while we order some new parts. As I said before, the truck is running pretty good. There is a definite improvement from the problems that we were having with it before, but we're just kind of trying to fine tune it a little bit and see if we can't get it right back to 100%. Maybe you want to go backwards and you want to try this sensor first and the speed sensor before you go spending money and tearing the transmission apart, and see if that works for you. That'll save you some time and money, and it's a cheap, easy way to fix it if that ends up being a problem. And then if that doesn't work, you could go a little deeper like I did by taking the transmission apart and replacing those parts inside. Either way, I think this is everything I can do to try and fix the problem. If you know any more, feel free to leave some comments and help us out.